My dad mocked me at the family dinner, saying, "I'm proud of all my children, except the loser here." The table erupted in laughter. Without a word, I left a document on the table. "Happy Father's Day," I said, walking away. Outside, I took back the luxury car I had once gifted him. A moment later, his furious scream filled the room when he saw what was written on the paper. I grew up in a picture-perfect suburban house in Ohio, the kind you'd see in a Christmas card. Red brick, white shutters, a lawn so green it looked fake. From the outside, we were the all-American family. Mom cooking in the kitchen, dad grilling in the backyard, my brothers tossing a football like they were auditioning for a Budweiser ad. But inside, I was the ghost. My dad, Richard, was the center of our world, but his light only seemed to shine on my brothers, Jake and Ryan. Me? I was the shadow, the one he barely noticed. It wasn't always obvious. When I was little, I thought that's just how dads were. Quiet, distracted, saving their smiles for the boys. But by the time I hit middle school, I knew something was off. I'd bring home a report card full of A's, and dad would give me a half-hearted nod, like I'd just told him the weather. Meanwhile, when Jake scraped by with a C in math, dad would slap him on the back and say, "That's my boy," like he just won the Super Bowl. Ryan, the baby of the family, could do no wrong. He was the star athlete, breaking soccer records and getting his name in the local paper. Dad was at every game, screaming from the sidelines, while I sat in the bleachers, sketching in my notebook invisible. I remember one Father's Day when I was 12. I spent hours making dad a card, glitter, stickers, a poem I poured my heart into. I handed it to him after dinner, my chest tight with hope. He glanced at it, muttered thanks, and went back to watching the game. 5 minutes later, Ryan tossed him a cheap #1 dad mug from the gas station, and dad lit up like he'd been handed a Grammy. I stood there, my card crumpled in my hand, wondering why mine wasn't enough. That moment stuck with me, a knife in my heart that never quite healed. Jake and Ryan were the golden boys. Jake, the oldest, had this charm that could talk a teacher into raising his grade or convince a stranger to buy him a beer. He and dad had inside jokes, matching fishing hats, and a handshake they'd made up when Jake was a kid. I'd watch them from the hallway, laughing over some scribbled business idea on a napkin, dad looking at him like he was the second coming of Steve Jobs. Ryan was the athlete, his soccer trophies lining the shelves like a shrine. Dad threw backyard barbecues for Ryan's wins, inviting neighbors, blasting music, the works. Me, I got a "that's nice" when I made the honors program. No party, no high fives, just a passing comment between bites of toast. Mom tried to soften the blow. She'd hug me and whisper, "You're special too, sweetheart." But even she knew the hierarchy. If Ryan wanted the last slice of pizza, he got it. If Jake needed cash, dad handed it over, no questions asked. Once I asked for a new sketchbook, and dad said, "What's the point? You'll quit halfway like everything else." That cut deeper than he'll ever know. I wasn't a quitter, but he'd already decided who I was. Dinner was the worst. I'd sit there picking at my food while dad grilled Jake and Ryan about their plans, their goals, their lives. He never asked me. If I spoke up, I'd get a grunt or a forced smile like I was interrupting their spotlight. So I learned to stay quiet, to fade into the background. But inside, something was brewing. Not just sadness, but anger, a fire I couldn't name. I was tired of being the forgotten daughter, the one who didn't matter. I decided I'd make myself matter, not for him, but for me. High school was where I started to change. I threw myself into my studies, stayed up late, writing stories, sketching, dreaming of a life bigger than that house. I didn't do it for dad's approval anymore. I'd given up on that. I did it because I wanted to prove to myself that I was enough. I worked part-time jobs, saved for extra courses, earned certificates, even landed a scholarship. Quietly, I was building something, even if no one noticed. But the sting never went away. At family dinners, dad would beam as Jake talked about his startup or Ryan bragged about his training camp. I'd mention my internship at a prestigious firm and dad would nod, then say, "Anyway, Jake, tell us about that investor meeting." I wasn't the main event, I was the intermission. My brothers weren't cruel. They loved the spotlight, sure, but they didn't push me out of it. That was all dad, and I couldn't figure out why. Did he think I wasn't worth his time? Did he even notice how his favoritism crushed me? Sometimes I thought he knew and just didn't care. I told myself to let it go, to stop chasing his approval. But deep down, I still wanted it. Just once, I wanted him to say, "I'm proud of you, Alina," and mean it. That moment never came. But another one did, one that changed everything. By my mid-20s, I'd built something of my own. A startup, a digital platform that was starting to turn heads in the local market. It wasn't just a business, it was my heart and soul. Every late night, every tear, every doubt I'd push through. I poured everything into it, believing it would finally make me undeniable. The launch event was in a sleek downtown conference room packed with investors, press, and industry folks. I took the stage, my voice shaking but steady, and shared my vision. The room was silent, hanging on my words. For the first time, I felt seen, not as the quiet girl in the background, but as someone who'd built something real. After the presentation, people swarmed me with handshakes and praise. Investors saw potential. The press wanted interviews. I let myself smile just for a moment, proud of what I'd done. But that pride didn't last. A week later, we had a family dinner, the kind where my brothers showed up with their usual swagger, tossing around stories of their latest wins. I waited for my moment, hoping for a nod, a word, anything. When I mentioned my launch, dad cut me off with a dismissive, yes, we know you're busy, dear," like I'd just mentioned doing laundry. The room went quiet, then moved on to Jake's new deal and Ryan's home run. That was it, the final straw. The weight of every ignored effort, every snub, hit me like a tidal wave. I realized I'd never get what I wanted from him, and I was done trying. After that, I went quiet. Not out of defeat, but clarity. I stopped showing up to family family events, stopped calling, stopped begging to be seen. I moved to a small apartment on the edge of town where the silence was mine. My startup became my world. Money was tight. Some nights, dinner was toast and instant coffee. I took freelance gigs to stay afloat, cried under my desk when the doubts got loud, but every time I wanted to quit, that fire inside me burned brighter. I learned to code, pitch, handle rejection, chase clients with a hunger only someone who's been overlooked can understand. Social media was a gut punch. I'd see Jake at conferences with Dad by his side, or Ryan holding another trophy, captioned, "Making the family proud." It hurt, but I didn't let it stop me. I closed the app, took a breath, and got back to work. My success didn't need applause, it needed grit, and slowly it came. My user base grew. A niche investor poured in seed money. I hired a small team, people like me who knew what it felt like to be underestimated. Together, we built something incredible. I didn't broadcast it. No holiday emails, no family updates. I let them think I was still the quiet girl in the background. But I was changing. My voice got stronger, my posture straighter. I bought my first car, signed a lease for an office with floor-to-ceiling windows, all without needing a good job from anyone. I looked in the mirror and saw someone new. Not the forgotten daughter, but a woman who'd clawed her way out of invisibility. Then came Father's Day, 2 years after I'd last been home. I decided to go back, not to reconcile, but to close a chapter. I sent a simple, "I'll be there" to the family group chat, ignoring the awkward emojis and silence that followed. The night before, I stood in a dealership, signing for a sleek black luxury car under a new last name I'd legally changed after launching my business. They wouldn't even know it. Next to me was a black envelope, heavy with a single document that would change everything. I pulled into the driveway, the car's purr like a warning shot. Inside, the house was the same. Tasteful, cold, my brothers laughing, Dad at the head of the table, king of his castle. His eyes flicked to me, surprised and smug. "Well, look who finally showed up," he said. I smiled, said, "Happy Father's Day," and sat down. Dinner was the usual. Jake bragging about his condo, Ryan about his promotion, Dad soaking it in. Then he looked at me, smirking, and then there's a loser at the table, still pretending to be the black sheep, huh? The room erupted in laughter. I didn't flinch. I waited. When the noise died down, I stood calm as a storm's eye. "I brought you something, Dad." I pulled the envelope from my purse and set it in front of him. "Open it," I said. He ripped it open, expecting a joke. His eyes scanned the paper, and his face changed. Confusion, disbelief, then horror. "What the hell is this?" he barked. "You remember Anderson Tech, the company you've worked at for 10 years?" I said softly. "It's under new ownership. I bought it. Effective last week." The room went silent. "I'm your boss's boss now." I glanced at the car outside. That was part of the presentation, but I'm taking it with me. I turned, walked out, and slid into the driver's seat. As the engine roared, I heard his scream from the open door. Not anger, but fear. That envelope wasn't just a gift. It was proof I'd taken everything: his company, his pride, his world. Driving away, I didn't look back. The weight of years, needing his approval, shrinking to fit his narrative, lifted. I wasn't the forgotten daughter anymore. I was Alina, the woman who'd built her own empire. Not for them, but for me. And that was enough.